this, Link? You're actually putting out a video? Oh, it's just a Let's Play, isn't it? Well, yeah, kind of. Basically, the gist of it is I have a lot of respect for Bloodborne, and it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I didn't think a simple review could do it justice. So I figured I'd sit down and suffer before all of you by doing a lore-through, walk-through, analysis, whatever the hell you want to call it. I've dug in deep, too. I have spent the last month and a half drilling this lore into my skull, to the point that if you were to remove it from my head, you would be able to attain Madman's knowledge, more or less. This game has become more or less a nightmare for me, which is kind of apropos, if you think about it. So yeah, what's the significance of this cutscene if you're going to talk about the lore? There is no significance at all. It's just promotional stuff, but it's cool, so what the hoo-ha, we are watching it. Yeah, I got a lot to complain about. Spending a month and a half playing the same game will do that, but I also still like the game. I don't hate it like I thought I would going into this. That poor dog. But really, in a Miyazaki game, dogs really are the enemy, aren't they? Oh, yep, there's the first showing of a trick weapon, if you're not counting in-game. Unfortunately, you never get to really get to that brutal with the enemies in the game. As fun as that would be. How do you even drop? Is the cleaver like sharp on the edge, on the front? Like, how was he shoving that into his chest? I guess that's the one lore mystery I didn't figure out. By hundreds of hours. I don't really think there's any significance to this scene either. Really. This is like from really early promotional work, so it doesn't really have any bearing on the actual lore of the game. There was some stuff pre-patch 1 that I'll be talking about way later on, probably. That's not in the final product. Why they, like, there's an item description for the 1/3 of an umbilical cord that's in the final product after the patch that wasn't there originally, and there's a lot of lore implications in the original description that aren't, or that are no longer present. So I'm definitely going to be having to talk about that. So, welcome to Bloodborne. Welcome to my living hell. We're here on the title screen, and before we dive into things, I just want to complain about this title screen. Like, back in 2015, I believe, when I first played this was probably the most disappointing thing about the game. Like, the Dark Souls and Demon Souls games don't really have remarkable title screens, but, they just use the box art. Not like the American box art, but like the original Japanese box art. And it's better than the American box art, which is like a Photoshop nightmare. I'll just post it like right in the middle of the screen so you can get a good old look at it. But, yeah, I'm not a big fan of this box art. It's a bit too reliant on symmetry. I see they try to go for a slight asymmetry with like the cleaver in one hand and the blunderbuss in the other. Sure, the background has some asymmetry, but overall, it's not very interesting to look at. It doesn't really tell you much about the game, but I suppose that the box art, or the original box art and the box art used for Demon Souls and Dark Souls aren't much better. But in the case of Dark Souls and Demon Souls, none of those really tell you much about the story either. Really, the DLC art actually would tell you more about what the game's about than the actual box art. Like what? Demon Souls has a picture of a ghost knight. Ooh, spooky! But yeah, phantoms are a mechanic, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the game. Dark Souls just has a guy on fire facing away. I guess that's actually a common motif that kind of pisses me off. Not just with the Souls series, but with game cover screens and title art in general. But the whole thing of the protagonist just looking away from you like he's a badass. Oh, I'm so tough. But yeah, that's enough of my ramblings, of my dislike of the title screen. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's get on with this.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've come to the right place. Yharnam is the home of blood ministration. You need only unravel its mystery. But where's an outsider like yourself to begin? Easy, with a bit of Yharnam blood of your own. But first, you'll need a contract.
Ah, yes, Pale Blood, the greatest mystery of the game. I have a lot to say on that. I think I'm generally in disagreement with the majority consensus on what the meaning of Pale Blood is, but I'll get to that as we get to it. As for the Blood Minister, who is one of the more mysterious figures in the game, there's nothing much of significance to him. He's basically an enemy model with a hat. Nothing special at all. I think he's just being facetious when he acts like he knows what he's talking about Pale Blood. I don't actually believe him, but the contract may be of some significance, because immediately after, as you'll see, well, I guess we'll find out. Sorry if I sound a bit on the edge. It's just I've been playing this game for so freaking long. Not to say I don't enjoy it, but I'm teetering on the edge of insanity, is basically the gist of it. Hopefully, taking it out on some enemies will help. But the reason I'm lingering here is because there actually is a few things I want to talk about. Like, there's not much to say about the implications of who the protagonist in the game is, the hunter, but I'm under the impression that he was a hunter before he first arrived in Yharnam, perhaps, given his physical abilities and his abilities to fight the Scourge of Beasts with the speed that he does. Sorry, that sentence was horrible. Basically, the protagonist just seems extremely physical fit, and given the guys that were supposed to be here to cure an illness, I'm under the impression that it's not a physical illness. In fact, I'm not really sure where the whole pretense of him having an illness that he's seeking a cure for came from. Like, I don't have any manuals or anything, so maybe it's in there. But under the presumption that he has an illness, I don't think it's an actual physical ailment that he's seeking a cure to. But this will be easier to talk about later, so I'll just pass on that for now. And I'll probably talk about it more in episode 2, so stick around if you can bear with my insufferable smugness and irritated disposition. Well, let's talk about some of these. These are basically similar to the classes in the Souls series. There's no real actual class system, so they more or less just influence what your stats layout are. They don't change your armor, they don't change your starting weapon, although they can influence what starting weapon might be best used by you. But you'll never know that unless you're, like, already a Souls fan, so I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown as we proceed. I'm going to be doing 3 runs of the game. One as the primary hunter run, which I'll be doing the live commentary on for the most part, and I'll be editing in other stuff to show off additional side content in the game that you might miss on the first run. Okay, let me try and explain this. Okay. Basically, the milk dust, or however you say that, it's basically what the description says. Ordinary, happy upbringing, all attributes average, which it's probably not a bad starting class. It lets you experiment more easily with different weapons and whatnot. You're pretty close to having a decent starting blood tinge and arcane, should you come across hunter tools or things that utilize blood tinge. But overall, it's not really significant. I don't really recommend starting with that origin, because it doesn't really benefit you. The 3 starting weapons are the Threaded Cane, Saw Cleaver, and the hunter's axe. So keep bearing that in mind. It helps to think about what you want your build to be in the long run when deciding on your origin. The lone survivor isn't much better. I suppose he has higher vitality. That's about it. Lone survivor of a lost hamlet. That's actually kind of interesting, but I don't really think it has any bearing on anything, given that this game takes place several years after the events of the DLC. But we'll get to that when we get to that. More or less, this hamlet is completely unrelated to the one in the DLC, and doesn't really have much of a bearing on anything. Ooh, I'm luring you so hard, aren't I? Yeah, troubled childhood, suffered misfortune in youth, highly resilient as a result. Speaks for itself. This results in higher endurance. This would probably be good for a skill build. So if you started with the troubled childhood origin, you'd probably want to go with something like the threaded cane, which has high skill scaling. There's the violent past, which has a high strength level, which means you probably want to begin with either the saw cleaver or probably the hunter's axe. Because you can really pass over the saw cleaver, because there's a much... Well, I won't say it's a better weapon, but there's a similar weapon that you can find in the first level, which I'll be showing off in this episode. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Born specialist fit for sleuthing in academia. Now, this build is pretty much the same as the troubled childhood. The trade-off is actually not much of a trade-off at all, really. I guess you have higher blood tinge, so this might be better for, I'm not really sure. I guess a pure... Yeah, probably like a pure skill build this would be good for. So you'd want to go with the threaded cane on this one. Military veteran is more for a quality build, I suppose. You'd probably want to go with like a saw cleaver at the beginning for this. It has pretty well balanced strength and skill, so this would make it easy to access the stronger weapons later on, such as the Kirk Hammer and Ludwig's Holy Blade. Yeah, it's pretty good offensive stats to start out with, so it can make the early game a little bit easier. And you don't really get a big trade-off in vitality either. You only really suffer in Blood Tinge and Arcane, and those aren't really necessary for getting through the game. In fact, generally, unless you're seeking an Arcane build or Blood Tinge build, I highly recommend against using those stats at all. Because mostly, you'll be using Blood Tinge if you want to focus on utilizing firearms, and it's only particular firearms, and if you can get the appropriate gems to use them properly. So overall, that's not really worth it. Blood Tinge is really only worth it with like a Noble Scion build, which usually has the end goal of using the weapon, the Chikage, which has a transformed state which utilizes Blood Tinge for attack scaling on your melee weapon. And it also goes well with the Evelyn, which is another weapon we'll meet later on that has high Blood Tinge scaling. So that's more for, that's a very particular build. It's kind of interesting, though, having high Blood Tinge being associated with nobility. Though I don't really think that has a bearing on anything either. It's just kind of an interesting role-playing thing, as most of these seem to be. Doesn't really tell you much about the world, really. Cruel Fate. High Arcane, shockingly. This would probably be good for an Arcane Strength build, I imagine. It's like 1 point away from being able to wield most hunter tools, which can be really useful. If you're going for that build, it's not really necessary. It's not going to make the game easier. But this will make an Arcane build a lot easier to make. And Waste of Skin. Basically, don't pick this class unless you're like doing a challenge run, you mad person. I'd never wish that upon my worst enemy. But for myself, I am going to be... What class am I going to do? I guess I'm going to be using the military veteran, since I'm going to make this character a quality build. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side after I finish naming this character and whatnot. Meet you on the other side of the cutscene. naming him Icor or Ecor, or however you pronounce that, because it basically means the blood of the gods. I think it's a fitting name, really, given the theming of the game, as we'll find out. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy this, and I'll meet you on the other side of the cutscene.
Good. All signed and sealed. Now, let's begin the transfusion. Oh, don't you worry. Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
Ah, you found yourself a hunter.
And welcome back. I probably did some post-commentary on the cutscene, analyzing it and everything. Just as the werewolf represents the latent beasthood inside mankind, and the messengers that we encountered in that instance, basically in association with the dream that we'll be reaching very soon, helped to stave off us succumbing to the blood immediately. Or perhaps it was all just some crazy hallucination, but it does have a bearing on things. Oh, what's this mysterious note? Oh, seek the pale blood, transcend the hunt. I wonder what pale blood is. I certainly have no idea. Actually, I do have an idea. But, I'm just gonna say this up front. I don't know if I'm right about everything I'll be talking about in the lore. I'm probably wrong on a lot of things. But given the amount of time I put into figuring this stuff out, hopefully I'll be able to add something new to the table, or bring something new to the table. Probably not, though. I basically stared down this room for like 50 minutes on my first run, taking notes. Didn't really lead to anything. This is basically just standard medical equipment. Nothing really of note. Bunch of syringes, bunch of blood vials and whatnot. Mixtures, all kinds of bottles. There's the blood we were attached to. I want to know why they have all these operating utensils. I guess because people come in here injured. I guess this is a clinic after all, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised by that. There's not really a whole lot to say about this room other than the note. And it says handwritten scroll, but according to Vadividya and Lore Hunter, what's the channel's name? I'll plaster it on the front of the screen or talk over myself right here with the actual channel. But the gist of it is that we wrote this note to ourselves to seek pale blood to transcend the hunt. Now, that's interesting because most Yharnamites don't seem to have any idea what pale blood is, which is really, really weird since it's the home to blood ministration. So either it's just some weird saying known to foreigners in reference to something that I'll be talking about sooner or later, or maybe it's something that's only known to people of the choir, perhaps, which is a possibility. Pale blood may be a legitimate thing, but I think I can agree with most of the community that it's not actually blood, like our friend over there seems to think it is. You hear that? I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. And we're gonna deal with him. This is our first time seeing a beast outside of the hallucination in the dream. Or I guess it's not a hallucination if it is a dream, nightmare, or whatever the hell that was. But yeah, this is basically our first introduction. Unlike the rest of the Souls games, this game does not have an intro boss, per se. It just has this asshole. And we're going to try and fist his asshole. Just shove our hand deep up in there and pull out all the goodies and whatnot. If we don't, well, I guess we'll be moving on ahead to the next part. Not really. I'm going to stay on episode 1 until I at least get to the point where I've shown off the entirety of Central Yharnam. I'm going to show off every little bit. Let's just get on with this, though. Nope. 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 Can I do it? Yes! Right up in there. Yeah, I did it. How'd you like that? We started the game with fisting a werewolf's asshole. How's that for quality entertainment? I'd say I'm right up there with the greatest. I'm not really that familiar with pop culture, so maybe I'm right up there with Plague. I think he's like the upper echelon of YouTubers, maybe. No, he isn't. Screw you. Oh, right out the gate, we are in a, I don't want to say a graveyard, per se. There's certainly graves here. It's probably very quick burials taking place after somebody passed away in the clinic, because the graveyards are packed, and death is clearly not uncommon in Yharnam. Like, our first signs to this are these coffins that are scattered about with locks on them. Presumably because of a fear of the dead coming out, either because of superstition or because of the Scourge of Beasts. Maybe it brings people back from the dead. Though curiously, there are empty coffins just lying around, like that one I just broke. Yeah, there's not much to say about that. We'll also be talking about these statues later, but this isn't probably the best place to look at them. I'm actually going to spend an entire episode talking about the architecture while in a few episodes, so we'll get to that later, I suppose. But for now, we'll press on into Central Yharnam, where the real meat of the game begins, and where I'm probably going to get axed in the face. Fun stuff, ain't it? Such is the misery of life. Now, what I find odd is, like, how did the protagonist get here? How did our hunter get to Yharnam? Because there's no road behind that carriage. It's just a wall that leads off into a cliff. There's a lot of dead-end roads in Yharnam. Like, I'll show it off later, but the layout of the city is completely nonsensical. I don't really know why. Like, the architecture is sublime, but the layout of the city planner is a fucking idiot. Like, honestly. Like, who hired him for the job? Here we see the rotting carcass of a horse. Let's just roll around in this. Gotta strave off the Scourge of Beasts somehow. They don't like disgusting meat, I guess. Or maybe they do. Maybe not that kind. Nope. No. Come here. Come here. Yes! Okay, looks like we are going to make it to the dream without dying. Yeah! 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 Okay. I'll try not to do that too much. Yeah, there's some more stuff over there that I'm going to come back and grab. But for now, we move on to the Hunter's Dream. After we climb this ladder. The Ladder of Mystery! Such lovely noises in Yharnam, aren't there? That's going to be a buddy we're going to be meeting a little later on. Can't see him. I kind of wish they showed him, like, hopping over the gate over there. But I guess the directional audio is enough to tell you where it's coming from. I guess they expect you to be, like, staring at the wall. I don't know why any sane person would do that unless they just don't care. I mean, I guess I can understand that. I certainly don't. But I'm doing an analysis, so I've got to show off everything. But these lanterns are a bit of an oddity. I think originally, in like the alpha and stuff, they originally planned on you to like shove them into the ground to create a checkpoint, sort of like what we saw in the early promotional work for Dark Souls 3, where you like create your own lamppost or lantern. There's not really a whole lot of lore implications around this, other than there's an association heavily with the hunters and the messengers, as well as lanterns. I guess lanterns are a sort of safe haven. Or maybe they're incense. Because incense is a very common thing. Like this lantern right here, this is burning incense. It's not an actual lantern used for lighting. Which is kind of surprising. But that usually shows that there's a sane individual inside of it, and we'll be talking to this guy in a bit. But not right now. Not right now. We're gonna go get ourselves equipped. We're gonna heal up, and then I'll get on with it. Yeah, what was on that lamp? How the hell did I get here? What's all this? No, what is this, really? No idea. Actually, this is the Hunter's Dream. I fooled you. I bamboozled you. I clearly made no mentions of alluding to this at all beforehand. Welcome to the Hunter's Dream. This will be our safe haven, our hub area. There is a lot to this place. For now, we'll talk to this guy, I guess. You know, I kind of forgot that he appears if you come here immediately without dying. Because if you die, this building's actually closed off for some reason. Not really sure why. I guess a willingness to come to the dream is necessary for him to give you any attention. It's kind of strange. Maybe it's not... I don't really know. I guess it's just a gameplay contrivance. Because they just want you to be going back into the world, not worry too much about this. Like the abandoned doll, the mysterious abandoned doll. Oh, I wonder what the deal with her is. Could it be she has eyes on the inside of her head? I'm pretty sure that's not just a messed up texture. I'm pretty sure that actually is an eyeball on the inside of that texture. It's kind of creepy. Kind of creepy. But it'll make sense. Soon enough, I'll get more into the lore stuff in regards to the protagonist much later. But for now, I'll start with showing off these weapons. Start with the saw cleaver, because that's going to be what I'm going to start out with. And I'll like do some post-commentary on some other footage showing off the other stuff. The guns don't really matter. Take your pick. I usually go with the hunter pistol because I can get a faster parry time and whatnot. I just find it easy. I hardly use guns at all in this game, really. Don't really see the point aside from like parrying. Then again, I've never really done a blood tinge build, so maybe it's actually pretty good. Yeah, this is the saw cleaver. The reason I picked this is because it's serrated, so that makes it pretty good for the first boss. Not that I'm going to be using this weapon for that boss. But also because it's a fairly quick, standard... It's not dissimilar from a longsword in terms of how you swing it around, aside from the actual stance and the grip. But yeah, this weapon has serrated damage, so it does bonus damage to beasts. I think you could probably tell what a beast looks like without me having to explain it. So yeah, this game actually makes it pretty easy to determine what weapons are effective against what in most instances. The only thing that doesn't really get explained well is like church weapons. Yeah, the saw cleaver, I think it's a good starting weapon. There's no real best starting weapon. I think it's a matter of taste, but I think in general, if somebody doesn't know what to pick, if you don't have a gut feeling as to what you might think you'd like best, you can just default to the saw cleaver. You can't really go wrong. You can swing it, it turns into something with a bit more reach, which is pretty nice, honestly. And I actually like that R2 attack, because it really helps with getting another weapon later on, as I'll show off. One thing the game doesn't really explain, though, is the storage case. Like, you can retrieve items, because some things don't go back into your inventory automatically. Quicksilver bullets and blood vials do, but nothing else does. Even if you have a lot of excess material, unlike Dark Souls 3, where it just refills whether you want it to or not, unless you disable it. But yeah. It's kind of odd. I don't think it's all that necessary, but if you're wondering where your excess material goes after you bought like 20 of something, and you're like, why do I only have 10? Why hasn't the number gone up after I died like everything else? This is why. You gotta go to the Hunter's Dream, open this stupid thing that's probably an oversight. I honestly am not sure why they didn't have it automatically refill stuff that you have excess material for besides blood vials and quicksilver bullets. Probably just an oversight, but yeah. Keep that in mind. It's very helpful to remember that. This is the workbench. Use it to upgrade materials. We'll get more into the mechanics, but basically it's just for repairs and upgrades for now. There are other features, but that's much later on. Me, hold that thought. Hello, this is me again from the future. I realized I was going to show off the other weapons, but I can only do that once per character for now. I could show them off later on the other character, but there was something I also want to show out. I was talking about how this place is closed if you get to the Central Yharnam lantern, but if you die, this is what it'll look like. The doors will be closed off. They'll be closed off, the doll will still be inanimate, as one might expect dolls to be. Yeah, neither door is open. That's basically the gist of it. This is going to be my arcane character. He kind of looks like a pretentious twat. Gave him a scar on his eye because he's real cool. He's a cool guy because he's using magic. The coward's weapon. I'm just kidding. I actually don't hate magic in this game quite as much as I do the rest of the Souls series, but I'm mostly just showing this off so I can show you the Hunter Axe. I'll be switching to another character soon enough. But for now, Hunter Axe, let's talk about it. This weapon, you really only want to do for strength builds. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Has a bit of a slower wind-up for its attacks, even in the one-handed mode. The non-trick mode. It's decent. It requires a bit more prediction of the enemy movements on your part than the other weapons. Like, in a Souls game, you don't want to be running in trying to attack enemies. Like you're playing The Legend of Zelda or something, or some other stupid game. That's not saying I think Zelda's stupid. It's actually one of my favorite games of all time, if you couldn't tell by the name I gave this channel, like, back in 6th grade or whatever. But yeah, you had to take some caution when you're approaching enemies in the game. And this weapon, even more so among the starting weapons, because it's fairly slow. The main draw is its two-handed state. Most beginners probably don't want to mess around too much with guns once they realize how piss weak the damage is. So you have this. It's got good reach, consumes a lot more stamina, but the main draw of this to a lot of people is the charged up attack, which is like spin to win, spin to win. Makes you a huge badass, super high damage. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of those moves. Not a fan of them in the Souls games in general. Not a fan of it in Bloodborne, but it's there. It's there. I'll show it off later during one of the boss fights in a couple episodes. But for now, that's all I really want to talk about with this weapon. There's one other feature of it that's kind of nice, and that's the Hunter Rally. Like, when you take damage from an enemy attack, there's a bit of time where you have the opportunity to attack back to regain that health. And compared to the other two weapons, this one has relatively high rally potential, so there's a good chance you'll get most of your health back if you attack immediately after. I can't really show it off here too well, but... Okay, let's try this. No, that didn't work. Okay, but basically when you take damage, your health will be orange for a brief period of time, assuming you don't get subsequent hits. And during the time that your health bar is orange, you can recover some of that orange HP by hitting enemies back after they've hit you. High risk, high reward, etc. I don't think the system was implemented as well as it could have been, but I do find it helpful on occasion. I'm not really sure why they change how rally potential works for weapons. I guess they want lower potential on faster weapons, which I get, but I think the gulf between them can be a bit much. Yeah, if you think you're going to get hit a fair bit, this is a decent weapon to regain lost health without having to waste the precious blood vials. And with that, we'll move on to yet another alternate version of me from the future. We're going 2 times into the future. 2 for the price of 1. How's that? How's that? Well, let's get to it. Shut up. I'll do the introductions here. This is my last character that I'm going to be doing a run with. This will be the Blood Tinge skill build. I've never really done one of these before. I've messed around with skill on a build before, but I never really messed with Blood Tinge, so this should be an interesting experience for me. This is mostly just to show off additional content. I didn't really need to do this to show off the Threaded Cane, once again, because it's a fairly low stat requirement. But it's convenient, since I'm making these characters anyway, to show off all the content. I suppose, if at any point you guys want me to, switch up characters during the playthrough to show off how progress is going with that, and then just cut in stuff from the main character when I feel necessary. Just let me know. Maybe I'll do an episode as my Blood Tinge build, maybe I'll do a run through as my Arcane. I'm probably going to stick to my main character for a while, because it's going to be a while before we see any decent Blood Tinge or skill strength weapons and Arcane tools and whatnot. So I'd say we're not going to worry about that too much now. I'm probably going to show off all the characters during the boss fight. But for now, let's just talk about this weapon. This is the last of the 3 hunter weapons at the very start of the game. This is the Threaded Cane. It's a sword, sort of, at the beginning. It's more like a blunt sword. I think it does slash damage, but I might be mistaken. It's kind of weird, because normally with a cane sword, the sword is inside the cane. But in the case of this one, it just kind of folds out into serrated edges attached with like a whip, which is kind of cool. If you want to go like full Castlevania, you might be interested in this. It gives you a nice bit of reach for reduced damage, of course, because it's a one-handed, long-reaching weapon. The trade-off's got to be somewhere, but it's not bad. It's good for crowd control. I'd say it's a decent starting weapon if you don't feel like you want to do Saw Cleaver. Really, the only one of the 3 starting weapons that I usually recommend against for newcomers is the Hunter's Axe, but really, it's up to you. Play how you want. Learn whatever weapon pleases you the most. I actually used Threaded Cane on my first run of the game, because it seemed cool having a whip weapon. I, too, wanted to be full Simon Belmont, etc. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This character's female because I figured you all want to see any female variations on armor, because there are a few armors that change depending on what gender you start out as. It's kind of neat. Kind of neat. Although it can be a bit irritating if you prefer a particular version of the set, you prefer playing as another gender. But it's whatever. It's cool. I don't really care much either way. I just thought it'd be neat, because there are some variations of sets that I prefer the female version of. The noble set in particular, or the knight set in particular, which I'll be showing off way later. But for now, I'm going to return you to the present. I'll return you to the present, where I have no idea that any of this even happened, and it's going to awkwardly cut to me introducing you to Gehrman. This weirdo in the house. Take it away past me. And I guess we'll talk to this asshole. Hey, Gehrman.
Aha. You must be the new hunter. Welcome to the hunter's dream. This will be your home for now. I am Gehrman, friend to you hunters. You're sure to be in a fine haze about now, but don't think too hard about all of this. Just go out and kill a few beasts. It's for your own good. You know, it's just what hunters do. You'll get used to it.
Now, I actually find that kind of interesting, the pause he does before he introduces himself by name. Like, he's not deceiving us. He's actually probably one of our most reliable NPCs, and probably one of my favorite characters in the game. But it's interesting, like, he's been in this dream so long that he can barely remember his name. He had to, like, think about it. Just imagine being trapped in... It's pretty much solitude, with the exception of, like, his weird little doll over here. But, yeah, he's, like, been here for maybe hundreds of years, probably. Just trapped, unable to leave the dream, as we'll find out later. Because he, like, no longer exists in the real world. His physical body is long dead, long gone. All that remains of him is his consciousness within the dream. And that's where it'll remain for all of eternity, depending on how things go in the end.
This was once a safe haven for hunters. A workshop where hunters used blood to enhance their weapons and flesh. We don't have as many tools as we once did, but you're welcome to use whatever you find. Even the dog, should it please you.
He's also a pervert. Who can't love this old geezer? Honestly. And also there's this oh, I guess I won't get into this. I won't dive into this quite yet. But we'll look at this, why not? To escape the dreadful hunter's dream, halt the source of the spreading scourge of beast, lest the night continue forever. I guess it's safe to assume this note is left by Gehrman himself, because only hunters have access to the notebook and are capable of leaving those. I'm playing offline, by the way, so it'll make it easier to find the notes from NPCs and whatnot that will be scattered throughout Yharnam. Yeah, we'll talk more about this later, but yeah, this game's gonna be a doozy. There's a lot to talk about. I don't even know how many episodes this is gonna be. I have a planner and I haven't even finished writing it out. There's also this little back alcove behind the building. There's not really much to it. There's like the stump messengers. It's like the stump appears the link to the nightmare. I guess they mean the scourge of beasts. Like the nightmare. The real world is itself referred to a nightmare in instances, but I think they mean that more metaphorically than literally, but it's hard to say. I guess it can be both, because whenever you die in this game, you don't actually die. You just reawaken as if the occurrences leading up to your death were just a bad dream, but you retain the memories. Sort of like how in Dark Souls, you're an undead, except in this case, you never die in the first place. You can think of it as like a precognition or clairvoyance of sorts granted to you by the stream. It's really weird, but I like it from a mechanical standpoint. I love it when games explain their game over mechanics like that. It's really nice. And these are the gravestones. I'll talk about them more later on, way later on, because I'm not even going to deal with this till like close to the end. But these are how you access the Chalice dungeons. That's gonna be really boring. I'm gonna be bringing on guests for that, just to keep me sane. And these are the tombstones that will lead you into Yharnam proper, as well as other places. We'll get to that later. If you need help or advice on how mechanics work in the game, there's notes scattered along this path back here. Nothing lore-wise, so there's not much to worry about. What's going on with those pillars? What are they? Well, I'm pretty sure they're not arch tree nods like most people seem to think. As for what they are, hell if I know. They're just really weird. We won't be able to access the area back there till much later. Alright, with that out of the way, I guess we'll plunge into Yharnam proper. Let's head back to the sick room for now, because there's an NPC I want to talk to. I'm going to try and show off all of her dialogue, so I'm probably going to have to make a lot of cuts. Because the only way you'll get to see all of her dialogue is if you use 4 of the items she gives you, and then go back to the Hunter's Dream, and then come back, or die, I suppose. That's also an option. But yeah, this is going to be quite the edit. Why am I talking over a loading screen? I didn't even want to show those. Oh well. Right, up here, this is where we first woke up, actually. Mysteriously, the door's been closed, and it even has a lock active, so we can't get in.
Are you out on the hunt? Then I'm very sorry, but I cannot open this door. I am Yosefka. The patients here in my clinic must not be exposed to infection. I know that you hunt for us, for our town, but I'm sorry. Please, this is all that I can do. Now, go. And good hunting.
Now, I do find it a bit odd that she knows instinctively that we're out on the hunt. I mean, we can't really see through this window all that well, but maybe she can see us from the other side and just sees that we're holding these weapons and the gun. But we are a patient from this place, so to be recognized as a hunter, it might be a particular scent, wink wink, wink wink, or perhaps it's... I honestly not sure. I think it's probably either the scent or she can see us through the window that would clue her in that we're out on the hunt. Either way, it's a bit strange. There's more dialogue, though.
Are you still in need of something? But I have nothing more to offer. Please, try to understand my position. I can only pray for a fruitful hunt.
So we've exhausted all of her dialogue for now. So let's take a look at the item that she gave us. Yosefka's blood vial. Blood vial acquired from Yosefka's clinic. This refined blood, highly invigorating, restores a large amount of HP. The product of a slow, careful refinement process, this rare blood vial appears to be of a clinical origin. Now this blood's kind of interesting because it's yellow rather than the typical red, so It's been, like, distilled. Like, in the opening cutscene, you see the blood being dripped into that one vial, into the yellow fluid. I think it's something like that. It's a way of refining the blood to put a restraint on the temptation of the beasthood that's heavily associated with the Yharnam blood. It's hard to say for certain, though. But yeah, I'm going to use that item, and then we're going to exhaust her dialogue. So bear with me.
You're safe. Thank goodness. But I'm afraid nothing will change. I cannot open the door. I'll do what I can, of course. Perhaps this will help you, if only in some small way. Now go. I pray for your safety.
Now, there's a certain camera angle that you can use to make out what she looks like, I believe. Her model is actually shared with somebody else in the game. The people who dubbed the imposter, but I'll show her off later. She actually does react to where you're standing on the opposite side of the door, curiously. It's kind of interesting. Like, I guess she can see us through the window. But yeah, as the dialogue might have clued in, she is actually one of the nicer, sane people. But as the game progresses, we'll be seeing a lot. We'll be seeing fewer of those. That's certain.
Are you still in need of something? But please, I can only...
Yep, we're gonna look at some more dialogue too.
Ah, you are safe. Thank goodness. But I'm afraid nothing will change. I'll do what I can, of course. Perhaps this will help you. This night is long, but morning always comes. Someone of your caliber won't fail us, I am certain. And once the night of the hunt ends, we can speak face to face. Then I can finally see what you look like. I shouldn't be thinking this, but I am rather looking forward to it. So please, be careful out there.
Now, this isn't dialogue I actually encounter at all, because really I don't really use the blood she gives us. So by the time I come back here after receiving the blood the first time, she's long gone. But it's actually kind of interesting. She says she can't see you. So I guess it is the scent. And we'll find out more about that later, but that is interesting. That they can identify hunters just by scent alone. Now, she actually is one of the few characters that cares about us, and that little bit of dialogue is rather nice. I just think it's a shame that it's hidden behind, like... I just think it's a shame that you had to go through, like, 4 things of dialogue. You had to go through 4 blood vials and 4 things of dialogue just to get that extra little tidbit. It's a real shame. I think it's a missed opportunity at characterization. I guess they expect people to fail a lot more than they do, and backtrack here. I mean, I guess that's a tempting offering of blood for the like early game for players. Like, oh man, that blood heals a lot more than the other blood vials. So I guess if you're a new player and you're not very good, you might come back here frequently, but you can only get a maximum 4 of those blood vials. So if you do that, I recommend saving it for the boss fights. I'm probably not going to be using it unless I like save it for like a much later boss fight. But, yeah, not much more to say.
I'm sorry. I have nothing else to offer you. I will pray for your safety. May light shine upon this night and your fortunes.
She really is nice, though. It's a shame. It's a shame. Actually, Miyazaki actually did plan originally to have a way of saving her from her fate. But I guess the rest of the team members ultimately decided not to. But you know, it's fair. It's fair. It is interesting. I wonder if her characterization would have been better had that been the case, but it can't be helped. Oh well, let's move on. Now we can talk about the rest of Central Yharnam. These guys, they aren't hunters. Even if they, you might think so, these are actually called huntsmen. They are Yharnamites that are just out on the night of the hunt in search of beasts. But they do not use trick weapons, which is one of the major features of the hunters. Hunters exist in two states. There's hunters that exist in name alone, and there are hunters that are associated with the dream. I have a lot to say on that, but we'll get to it. We'll get to that later. There's these two enemies over here. Not too interesting. They're pretty easy to take down. So if you struggle fighting them, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's really weird. There's all these dead-end streets. Like, just sudden sharp drops for no apparent reason. The only continuation of the street is, like, through this gate. But that doesn't lead anywhere. It leads to a gate that leads to a roundabout, but the roundabout doesn't lead up to any other roads either. I honestly don't know what's up with this place. I'd say that maybe they don't travel by foot, but that doesn't make any sense. Because there's carriages scattered all over the place. How'd they even get the carriages over here? They, like, carry them over the wall? Like, what is this nonsense? Yeah, like I mentioned before, there's, like, all kinds of coffins all over, so death isn't uncommon. Suitcases from people trying to flee the town, perhaps. Or maybe sometimes it's the luggage of people that have come here in search of a cure, wanting it in spite of the risks that may present. But there's not much more to say on that. Anyway, let's talk to the NPC I was talking about earlier. You can hear him coughing inside. Like, here's a fellow foreigner that came to Yharnam in seek of a cure, but we'll hear the rest from him.
Oh, you must be a hunter. And not one from around here either. I'm Gilbert, a fellow outsider. You must have had a fine time of it. Yharnam has a special way of treating guests. Well, I don't think I could stand if I wanted to, but I'm willing to help if there's anything that can be done. This town is cursed. Whatever your reasons might be, you should plan a swift exit. Whatever can be gained from this place, it will do more harm than good. Pale blood, you say? Never heard of it. But if it's blood you're interested in, you should try the Healing Church. The church controls all knowledge on blood ministration and all varieties of blood. Across the valley to the east of Yharnam lies the town of the Healing Church, known as the Cathedral Ward. And deep within Cathedral Ward is the old Grand Cathedral, the birthplace of the Healing Church's special blood. Or so they say. Yharnamites don't share much with outsiders. Normally they wouldn't let you near the place, but the hunt is on tonight. This might be your chance. Across the valley deep, I haven't heard of pale blood, but that's your best bet if it's anything to do with unique types of blood.
He's one of the other sane NPCs. He actually helps us out a lot over the course of the game if you're ever in need of direction. Like I said, he's another foreigner. He tells us that it's in our best interest to leave, but I'm honestly not sure how we even got here. How did we get here? I'm not going to dwell on the road thing. It's just... Maybe it's all just a crazy hallucination. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, that's Gilbert. He's our buddy. our chum. He's an alright guy. We'll be talking to him more later. But for now, let's just move on with it. It's funny, though, that he should mention the... What was it that he said? It's funny that our character, despite writing a note to himself to seek pale blood, doesn't know what it is. Like, why do I keep saying like? I'm irritating myself with that. Our armor, for instance, like, seems to allude that we don't even know who we are, as we'll see right here. Hood worn upon awakening to the nightmare of blood and beasts. Perhaps its wearer had to stay out of sight and traveled by cover of night. Without memory, who will ever know? So whatever effect that blood had, robbed us of our memory. Perhaps. Although, with my theory of who the protagonist is, it might make more sense. So, I'll get to that later. Clothing worn by... just the same stuff as before. Not typical clothing of a Yharnamite. Perhaps it is of a foreign origin. It is said, after all, the traveler came to Yharnam from afar. Now, what I find interesting about the wording is the traveler. Like, I guess it's talking in third person, so it's not too weird, but it seems to imply that the knowledge of the traveler visiting Yharnam might have been a sort of prophecy or something, though I don't really think that's the case. I think that's just a weird translation thing, maybe. It's hard to tell. Either way, I'm not very... it doesn't really allude to anything. I can't really find any lore implications on that. Then there's the stealthy bandage, which is terribly worn and unsanitary. A faint memory recalls blood ministration involving the transfusion of unknown blood, not long after the nightmare began. So, our only memory is just what we saw at the very beginning, with us signing the contract and being administered the unknown blood. Yharnam blood, as it were. Yeah, there's not much else to say on that. Although, Gilbert's probably right, nothing good can arise from being in Yharnam. It's just madness. Just madness. You gotta be careful about that last hit that enemy does, because it can catch you the wrong way if you're not careful. I find it odd there's skulls there, though. Were those, like, lying on the suitcase and I just didn't notice? Oh, well. You can head down this way if you want to get to the street level quicker, but I don't really recommend it, because you're missing out on some blood echoes. Blood echoes are this game's currency and experience. If you're unfamiliar with the Souls games, the way that works is, like, if you die, you'll drop your blood echoes or souls wherever they are, or an enemy can pick them up, as of Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. And the only way to retrieve it is to reach your blood stain or kill the enemy that has stolen it before you die again. Otherwise, you lose it forever. I've always liked that mechanic, although it can lead to a lot of frustration for beginners, I find. Yeah, let's move on. There's only these two enemies. They're pretty easy to take down. You just break this guy's guard. As long as you're aggressive, he shouldn't really pose any threats. The knife guys and sickle guys aren't really an issue at all, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. And now we've reached the street level. I'll be talking more about this later, but they don't really have much of a fondness for beasts. Although, are they really beasts? Who knows? Who knows? Wasted enough time that I screwed up the enemy AI and they've already gone ahead. We're gonna try and kill this guy. This is an executioner. They are actually pretty dangerous. Ow. Yep. Like I said, dangerous. Seems to be kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not I actually beat them. I suppose I should have been parrying rather than just eating it. Yeah, I'm usually pretty good about the whole not dying thing, but this enemy tends to catch me off guard a bit. So let's try and get our blood echoes back. We got off a nice parry. Those are our visceral attacks. You fire your gun during the enemy's attack animation. Come on. Come on. Do an attack. That's a really irritating glitch that happens sometimes where you like try and perform a visceral attack, but you like go right through their body. Didn't happen that time though, thankfully. Man, I'm wasting a lot of bullets. But bullets are no short supply in this game, so I'm not too worried about it. Sometimes he drops a blood gem, which is pretty nice to get this early on, but I'm not gonna like grind for it or anything. Let's move on through the streets. This area you can usually catch a lot of players off. One of the things that Bloodborne does a lot better than the rest of the Souls series is that the character is both quick enough and the weapons are usually versatile enough to allow for you to manage fighting multiple enemies at once. So it's not really as much of an issue as it would be in the rest of the series, which I appreciate. I do think that this is a good way to help the player learn to manage spacing with their enemies. This is overall probably my favorite level in the game, arguably, even if the atmosphere's not... Well, the atmosphere's spot on, but it's not like bleeding atmosphere like the rest of the game does. Anyway, let's talk to this guy.
Are you that outsider? Well, sorry, but I don't want anything to do with you. Trot along, will ya?
Needless to say, Yharnamites aren't too fond of foreigners. Clearly, before the night began, they were aware that I'd come to town. I guess word of mouth travels fast whenever a traveler is in the area. Probably because they don't like them. Bunch of racist, xenophobic dicks and whatnot. Really weird. Not really much to say. Maybe that's why it says the traveler rather than something more specific. Maybe it's because it's an unreliable narrator, so they're probably just saying that because maybe they're not fond of me either. Anyway, here's another NPC.
Lads, you've come on. He'd open the door the night of the hunt. Away with you. Now.
No, this guy makes a bit more sense. Why would you want to open up the door on the night of the hunt? The people outside have gone mad and are like trying to kill you. Beasts roaming the streets. It's a complete mess. There's fires, coffins, carriages, the works. I wouldn't want to be out here either, but we don't really have much of a choice, do we? This is a mistake a lot of players make early on, is they'll like notice over here like, oh man, I had to fight this entire crowd of enemies all at once. No, you don't. Don't be fooled. Take a look at your surroundings. That's the first rule when playing a Souls game. Look at your surroundings, and you'll find the staircase, and this enemy that's resting that'll shoot you in the back if you run over to initiate combat with the rest of the group. He's a good way to get some quicksilver bullets, though it doesn't really matter too much. Then there's this guy. He's like off to sneak attack you. This is like your first introduction to the sneak attacks. I remember Plague of Gripes saying that Bloodborne is obsessed with monster closets, but really, outside of like chalice dungeons, you don't really see it too much, I don't find. Like, there's a few optional areas that still utilize it, but overall, it's not as bad as he seems to say it is. Then again, maybe he messed around with the chalice dungeons more than I have. I will be messing around with the chalice dungeons, though. That's going to be much later on. I can cover all of them, even if it costs me the rest of what remains of my sanity. And these three enemies will follow you up, so don't be too enthralled by the enemy wandering off over here. Doesn't really do a whole lot for you. You probably hear the toll of the bell, signaling the beginning of the hunt. So, as you can tell, it's late evening, so the hunt's only just beginning. So, not much to say. Okay, this is our introduction to backstabbing. It doesn't work the same as the other Souls games, because it actually requires you charge up your weapon, which is actually a mechanic I wish they had kept for Dark Souls 3. This helps the game balance a bit. Making backstabs harder to pull off is a plus, I'd wager. It keeps people from backstab fishing and whatnot. Although charge attacks are pretty good in and of themselves. So if you're already doing that, why would you want to bother with backstabbing? More about spacing and timing and whatnot. Ow. I didn't even see him. That's what I get for turning the camera around. Oh, come on. That push attack's really... Oh, don't you start with me. These dogs are really irritating. They're not the worst Miyazaki dogs. That goes, that honor goes to Dark Souls 3. But they're pretty bad. Those dogs are pretty bad. I don't know what it is with Miyazaki and making me hate dogs. I have 2 puppies in my house that I adore, but I don't know. This is like the one game that doesn't make me feel bad for killing dogs. Most of the time I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, they're too cute. But in this game they're like, oh, these dogs are fucking assholes. It's amazing. No. Bad. Oh, come on! I actually do think that is a slight problem on Bloodborne's part. Is that it makes it really easy to die. Like, the other Souls games are punishing, sure. Punish your mistakes. But this game, sometimes it just feels like it cheats you. It doesn't give you the opportunity to recover. Bosses can be pretty relentless. Sometimes you just get surrounded on all sides and you can't do anything about it. I don't really think it's a huge issue in terms of mobs, but I do think this area can be a bit overwhelming for a starting area. At least for newcomers. And there's that burning pile of corpses. Let's not pay too much mind to that. And I've been talking for a while. It's starting to wear on my throat, actually. Moving on. Like I said, this first episode's mostly just going to be walkthrough stuff, less lore. I'm going to do more of a lore talk in a couple episodes after I've cleared everything for Central Yharnam. But for now, it's just going to be me showing you the optimal way to get through Yharnam, in my opinion. And these enemies are your introduction to parries, because they have a really wide attack window for you to shoot them. Makes them really easy to parry. For better or worse, I don't think it really trivializes enemies too much in this game. Not in the same way parrying and backstabbing did in Dark Souls. It is kind of odd, though. Like, it does allow you to parry bosses in this game, thankfully. Which is one thing the first game was lacking. I mean, Dark Souls was lacking and Demon Souls. Dark Souls 3 implemented it, but it's still not really viable. So being able to actually parry and riposte bosses is really nice. Some bosses have bigger windows than others, and there are still yet other bosses that can't be parried, which I guess will be a persistent issue, because you don't want to absolutely trivialize boss fights. But yeah, there is that. Here's another stupid dog. It's like, this is the cattle cave of dogs. Not too worried about it, though. For now, we'll head on back. This is actually a shortcut that will open up a route to the second half of Central Yharnam. So if you head up these stairs after making that drop-off, you'll be able to access the Central Yharnam lantern. Oh, God, my throat. There's these busted up steps. I can only imagine what did that. It could be a number of things, but I think it's a safe bet. It's one of the bosses that we're going to be seeing in a bit. Now, this building, strangely, that door is locked from the other side, or maybe it's the other door. It's kind of nonsensical, because really, if you just walk around the building, you can open this door. I guess they intend for you to come from the other direction, but it's still really weird. This is one of the NPCs I was talking about from the beginning cutscene. It actually uses the same model as the Blood Minister. So yeah, it basically has no significance at all. How's that for lore? When the hunt began, the healing church left us, blocking the great bridge to Cathedral Ward, as old Yharnam burned to the ground that moonlit night. Oh, we'll find out more about that later, but I have some more thoughts. I'll probably show the text on screen if I ever talk about that particular statement again. But for now, let's move on. We're not going to worry too much about lore right now. Certainly will later, but that's going to be when everything's dead and I don't have to worry about fighting everything. Ooh boy. Made it back to Gilbert. Good old Gilbert. We're not going to the Hunter's Dream, though. I just want to open up that shortcut. That leads back to the Lantern, so if you ever feel the need that you desperately need to go to the Hunter's Dream, you can. There's no real point, though, because until you have one insight, you can't level up or anything. So for now, we will press on. We will keep on, keeping on, etc., etc. Now, down here are 2 brick trolls. This area can cause people some trouble early on, because they're, like, really strong enemies. But they're fairly easy to take down as long as you got your visceral attack timing down. Doesn't make them any less dangerous once they both aggroed onto you, though. Like that. Like, even if you get the parry timing down, there's still a chance you'll get hit. Now come here. Let me get you. Yeah, I don't really know what's up with that visceral attack glitch I showed off earlier. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't happen during this playthrough, but I guess me showing it off is helpful for warning you guys that can happen. I don't know why. I guess it's like if you press forward while you're attacking, you like slip through them. Oh god, I'm getting that verbal tick again. I'm saying like too much. Oh well. Pressing on. Next we're going to be going to get a set of armor called the Hunter's Set. So I'm going to like fast forward using a fancy transition. It's not really all that fancy. Alright, we're back where we first opened that shortcut. Down to the dogs, the stupid dog cage. We're not going back down there, obviously. But I do recommend opening that path as early as you can. Dogs can be a bit overwhelming, though, so be cautious if you're not familiar with the game.
I don't reckon you're from round here. Well, stuck outside on a night of the hunt. Oh, you poor, poor thing.
And this is a patronizing bitch, so we're just gonna leave her. Just gonna leave her. Hey, here's a fountain. Okay, not much to say about that. It's a fountain. And a bigger fountain. I guess that's more of a well. Yeah, this... like I guess I'm going to talk about the architecture later. I'm getting ahead of myself. These are carrion crows. They can be dangerous if they catch you the wrong way, because they kind of blend into the scenery. Really, they're no threat. They're mostly designed to startle you, because they're screeching and leaping and pecking at you. But you don't really need to worry about them too much. Over here's some items. I do recommend picking up the item behind those coffins that I broke, though, because those will come in handy for the boss fight. Those are oil urns. They like damage the they increase the damage you receive when throwing Molotov cocktails. Which against the boss in case in the boss I have in mind, it's going to be very useful. Here's another door, but there's no one to talk to here. Not on this side, anyway. There's a side window back here where we can talk to somebody, but we'll worry about that later. Gotta love those stupid dogs. I know I do. Really? Now, I have to say this right now. The torch attack from this guy is extremely lethal. Like, it does a surprisingly large amount of damage. So, keep that in mind, because that could mean very fast death. Don't recommend it. And here we have another stupid dog. Fortunately, these dogs aren't too bad, but dogs have this weird, unique ability in the game where they can keep you from using your hunter rally to regain HP after attacking an enemy. Because in most instances, when you attack, if an enemy attacks you, you can recover some of that lost health by attacking back. But if a dog bites you, you lose that health more or less. Well, I don't want to say permanently, but you can't regain it using the regain mechanic. It's the lost health, basically. That's one of the pains about dogs in this game. Now, another mistake players tend to make is crossing the bridge right here and engaging these werewolves. You can try to throw pebbles at them to lure them away from one another, but I don't recommend that either because they tend to aggro in pairs, and you don't want that. Trust me. I don't know why they have that rubber band AI where if you aggro one, it aggroes the other one, but you don't want to deal with that. It's almost certain death. I think it's likely that you probably die if you're a beginner to the very beginning werewolf as well. You definitely don't want to deal with two of those. Probably don't want to deal with those until at least a few bosses later when you've leveled up and upgraded your gear and stuff. That's not... You don't want to mess with those enemies. You can't take the ladder down here, but I recommend just following, because who gives a shit. This is the way to get the Hunter set, which is a very nice higher defense set for the early game. Once again, you can climb a ladder, but I'm not the type of person who really cares, so we're going to go down here. These enemies are a more advanced form of the beastly scourge that's plaguing the town, but they still retain some of their sanity, so you'll see them like still garnishing the weapons that they would have held when they were still more human. But these are your main first indication that the beasts themselves were at once human. And these ones are the really annoying ones. They like have they can impale you, and they do really high damage. So you want to be careful not to let them hit you. They are a very easy way to die. Very easy. Fortunately, the guys with the cleavers are a bit easier. There's a much more annoying variant we'll encounter later on, but I'm not too worried about that right now. For now, let's just keep going. We're getting close to the armor. We're right above the sewers of Yharnam. I don't know if that's what they're actually called in the game. I'm gonna have to like talk to Gilbert. I know he refers to them as something else, but I'll just call them sewers for now. They're full of filth and rotting corpses, carrion crows, and rats. So I think it's safe to call it a sewer. Don't judge me. These rats aren't too bad. They can catch you off guard sometimes if you're not really familiar with their moveset. They're actually kind of easier than the rats in Soul series, I find. Because they have a bit more of a wind-up for their attacks than those of the Soul series. Which is kind of fortunate. I don't really consider them as much of a threat as their Souls counterparts. This area's not too bad, really. If you see them wind up like that, they're about to jump. That's really their most dangerous attack for catching you off guard. Everything else is more or less negligible. Not really much of a threat. There's nothing down here, I just wanted to kill them for the extra echoes. Anything for more echoes, you can grind if you want, but I generally just kill everything in one go, so I have enough to level up and get through the area. I'm not the type of person that likes to grind much, unless I'm like getting gear. I guess I'm going to have to grind some for this LP. Not on screen or anything, but I gotta afford all the gear in this game somehow to show off the lore. I mean, I could show it off in the shop, but I like to have it on hand. How am I supposed to be a good host if I don't show you this? If I don't show you the goods? If I don't show you the goods, what's gonna hold your interest, really? But yeah, that's the hunter set. Let's take a look at it. One of the standard articles of hunter attire fashioned at the workshop. A fine piece of hunter attire that provides a stable defense for anyone facing Yharnam's beastly threat. Recognizable by its withered feather, this cap is fashioned after one of the old hunters. We'll meet the old hunter that's mentioned in this armor set description much later. But for now, I'm not worrying about it too much. This is the other piece of the hunter. This is actually what the fan base refers to as the A set, because there's actually 2 sets of hunter's gear. What distinguishes the two is mainly the hat and the chest piece. The chest piece distinguishes itself by the its short cape for wiping away blood, as is in the description right here. It's a fine piece of hunter attire that provides a stable defense for anyone. Nothing really interesting. It allows one to stalk beasts unannounced by cover of night. It's a very dark set of armor. Obviously, the early hunt... Well, maybe not obviously, but since the hunts take place at night, it would make it easier to hunt the beasts if you blended into the background and the lack of light present in Yharnam. How that guy died, I don't know. Maybe he got impaled by this weird beast. Hell, this guy is not even wearing the same set as the one he was carrying, which is even stranger, if I'm being honest. You find a lot of corpses like those. I don't really know what's up with them. There's like 2 variants, and I guess Miyazaki and his team couldn't be bothered to make the model wear the actual outfit that they're holding. Basically, all these sets that you find on the ground, or on the corpses anyway, not the sets that they're holding, are association with the healing church that Gilbert mentioned. Like, these would be the recruits that were taken in by Ludwig during the early days of the hunt, but it's also shown as it's sold by the Bath Messengers of the Dream, as I'll show off later, because I plan on purchasing that set. I honestly find it more aesthetically pleasing than this set. I get the appeal of this set, but it's not really for me, personally. I think the flap's a bit too small for my taste. These enemies aren't too bad. They're pretty easy to take down. If you pick up the item, they'll aggro all at once, so I don't recommend doing that. Though sometimes they just aggro together anyway, so it's a big ol' fun time. Oh, I'm so good at effective speech, aren't I, guys? Ah, the nightmare. Oh, no, I don't really know what's up with these corpses. Maybe... This doesn't seem to have much of anything to do with the beastly scourge. I guess this is why they chain up coffins, to avoid these abominations rising out of them. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Oh, missed one. It's kind of hard to tell. They're all corpses. Ugh, I'm a bit off my game tonight. Whew. Okay. Now, there's a way to get up over here, but we're not going to worry about that right now. I'll show you the way to get over here from there later. I actually find it to be... Well, it's not the most effective way, but for the other piece of equipment I'm going to show off us getting, it's going to be necessary. More corpses. Ooh, this is really doing a number on my throat. Gonna have to get me some sweet tea or green tea. One of the two. Then my throat will be all lubed up and satisfied, etc., etc. Sexual innuendos and whatnot. These guys have really annoying instant attack animations, which if you're not using like the threaded cane can make them a bit more irritating to fight. They're really not too much of a pain, but they can overwhelm you sometimes if you're not careful. Now, some people like to take the upper path of this, but I'll show the other way in a bit. First, I'm going to take care of these freaking crows. I think the most dangerous attack on the crows is that little peck they do when they're on the ground rather than the one they do in the air. That's the one you want to look out for, although really you can't really look out for it. So just keep your distance and try to circle behind them because they can't turn very quickly even if they do their jump attack. But yeah, as I was saying, you can climb up this ladder to get to a shortcut, but there's another ladder further down this way. You might see that intimidating figure back at the end of this place. I wouldn't worry about it too much, as long as you're not like slowly trotting down the hall, you're not in too much danger. But what you want to do is you want to strong attack him and then fist his asshole. Give him a nice colon examination, etc. Give him the old 2 shove, 2 for the price of 1. Because that's what you should think of when you think of Bloodborne and Dark Souls. Shoving things up pig assholes. Really, that's the highlight. We've already hit the high point of the game. Fortunately, those giant pigs are found throughout the game, so we'll have no shortage of assholes to thrust our fists into. Don't you worry. Yeah, up here's we're gonna climb this annoying ladder. I don't really know what this game's obsession is with ladders. Maybe Gideon, whatever, Gilligan from Dark Souls 2 was here. Probably not, I'm just messing around. There's no crossover between Bloodborne and the rest of the Souls universe. The most you might find is a nod, but their lore is completely unrelated. Although they both draw inspiration from Norse mythology to some extent. I don't think Bloodborne draws as much, but it's still present. I'll point it out when we see it, but for now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. This bridge actually leads to the second boss, or actually it could be the first boss. It really depends. I don't recommend fighting this boss first, because he can be pretty difficult, but I'll show him off in a later episode. Don't recommend that path, but actually, there's some items over there I want to get, so I'll just trot across again. How's that for a useless cut? I walked all of a bridge length. How's that? There's just these 2 enemies. You don't want to go up that staircase on the left because that'll lead to the boss fight, and that boss is like the hardest boss to be introduced to in the game. He's not actually that difficult once you get the playstyle down for this game. God damn, he never aggroes. Why did he aggro? Man, you're irritating. What's with enemies just aggroing onto me for no reason? Okay, come here. Let me just shove my hand right in you. Let me hold you close. There you go. That's what you get. That's what you get for being an asshole. Yeah, this is a good spot because you get the Bold Hunter's Mark. They're basically this game's version of the Homeward Bone, which if you're unfamiliar, it'll return you to the Lantern. It'll respawn all the enemies, but it's your safest bet for returning to the Hunter's Dream without losing blood echoes. I'm not really sure why it doesn't take you immediately to the Hunter's Dream. It's kind of weird. You can also use the Hunter's Mark right here to wake up at the Lantern, but if you do that, you sacrifice all your blood echoes. So basically, never use that under any circumstances, unless you like have no blood echoes and you just want to go back really badly. But yeah, this is the shortcut back to the Lantern from earlier. There's only the one Lantern. So this level more or less introduces you to the idea of opening shortcuts. I've noticed a point of contention with a lot of new players. I noticed this most prominently with Angry Joe's video a few years back, where he was complaining about how there were no checkpoints. But the real point of the design is to introduce you to opening shortcuts to make it easier to traverse the environment. Technically, I've already made it so I can easily get to the 2 boss fights, but I'm not going to show those off yet, partially because my voice is wearing out, and partially because I'm not done showing off our way around this area. So I'm going to hush my mouth, and I'm going to show you the last of the stuff we need to get. Alright. I don't know why I took the long way. I could have just walked back down the path, but whatever. We're back near the dogs. We're back near the dog shortcut. You can head from the Lantern if you opened up the shortcut I showed. You can hop down that ledge. Moving on, moving on. Not much more to say. Those are hunting dogs, needless to say, I suppose. They're basically meant to annoy the beasts, I guess. They certainly annoy me.
You're a hunter, aren't you? Then, well, do you know of any safe places?
Oh man, that sounds like a nice old lady. I wonder what she has to say.
I've heard I have. Shutting up indoors isn't always enough. Well, if you hunters got off your arses, you wouldn't be in this mess. You're obligated to help me, you hear? So what'll it be? Are you going to tell me you're not? Yeah, I should have known. You're good for nothing. No respect for the elderly is what that is. Yeah. That lot of good you outsiders do. Go on. Admit it. You think we're all mad, don't you? Well, go and stop it. I know all your tricks.
Yeah, she's a delight, isn't she? She's basically just going senile, I think. I don't really think she's succumbing to madness of any kind as a result of the blood or anything. And yeah, we're gonna deal with her later. There's not much more to say on her right now, so I'll get to that in a few more episodes. Now, I'm gonna go in here. Don't worry, those of you screeching at the screen about me not going upstairs right now. We'll get to that in a bit. But for now, I want to clear out some of the more dangerous enemies, because why the hell not? Come here. Yep. Okay. Just thrust my hand in there. Okay. Yeah, he didn't die in one hit, sadly. They're pretty easy to take down for the most part. You don't really have to worry too much. Gotta be careful about these gunmen, though. Especially once we get outside, that's when it's getting real dangerous. I don't really feel like dealing with them when we go down to get the items that I'm going to show off in a bit. So we're going to kill them right after I kill this one enemy over here. The items are going to land down there closer to the sewer. This actually seems like a ship house, which is kind of weird if you think about it. Because there's no rivers running through the town. I guess they'd construct the ships and then, what, carry them out of the city to the rivers in Bergenworth, maybe? I honestly don't know. It's just a really weird building. I think it's a ship warehouse. I mean, I'm no expert on archaeology, architecture or anything, but, yeah. Not much to say on that building, it's just really there's another one. Oh, I've no doubt attracted some enemies, I imagine. This area is really dangerous, because if you catch those enemies in the wrong rhythm, they'll, like, both aim at you, and you don't want that. What you do want is to throw a charm into him, because this is, like, the worst combination of enemies. You got two enemies firing guns at you, you got the guy with the impaling spear, and the alternating gunshots. This area can be very irritating, but we're in the clear. We are in the clear. Now over here is an important item. Actually, two important items, I think. Gotta kill these carrion crows first. Like I said, these enemies can catch you the wrong way. They're mostly amassed in the early game, so you don't really have to worry about them later on, but by then they wouldn't be a threat anyway. They actually are present throughout the entire game, but they become less of a threat as you go, since you more or less know all their tricks. Why are you doing this video anyway, Link? Is it because of all the Dark Souls 2 talk? No, I've been working on this for well over a month, planning this out. It's been a huge pain, I'm doing it for you. Actually, I'm doing it for me. This is a passion project. I've wanted to talk about Bloodborne for a while, but I inadvertently drove myself mad, or to the brink of madness. So I'm hoping by the end of this playthrough, I'll be able to wake up and forget it all. Never to talk of Bloodborne again. Who knows? Who knows? Let's head back away. I forgot to talk a minute ago, so I ended up breaking all these barrels. Didn't miss anything important, though. This way is how you get the 2 items, along with some other stuff that's fairly important. It's how you start a certain quest line. Highly recommend it. This is the scaffolding above the warehouse we were in. There's 2 corpses strung up. I said 2 corpses strung up. God damn it. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. There we go. Yeah, the only things up here is some cold blood and these corpses. One of those corpses has a weapon. But we're getting both, for sake of 100% completion. Because I am insane, probably. Yeah, over here is an NPC that's actually pretty useful. This is Eileen the Crow.
Oh. A hunter, are you? And an outsider? What a mess you've been caught up in. And tonight of all nights. Here, to welcome the new hunter. Prepare yourself for the worst. There are no humans left. They're all flesh-hungry beasts now.
No, there's not really much to say. The main reason you want to talk to her is because she gives you the bold hunter mark. Being this game's homeward bone, it's pretty useful. As she said, there's no humans left, just beasts. She's not entirely correct, but in the streets, I believe she's pretty much right. You won't find any sane humans merely walking about the city streets of Yharnam. They're all long gone. There are a few safe havens where you can send people that aren't affected by the Scourge of Beast, for the most part. But yeah, not much else to say. She herself is a foreigner to Yharnam as well. We'll find that out much, much later when we get her set. But for now, that's all I've got to say on the matter. I do love her mask.
Still lingering about. What's wrong? A hunter unnerved by a few beasts?
I just want the company.
No matter. Without fear in our hearts, we're little different from the beasts themselves.
I do find that line kind of interesting, that fear is what separates man from beast. I guess it's not an uncommon idiom, but it's still interesting given the circumstances. Although, as we'll find out, fear is still something that some beasts still feel. Yeah, let's just finish off our dialogue.
What are you still doing here? Enough trembling in your boots. A hunter must hunt.
And that's that. Not much else to say. I don't know why she thinks we're unnerved by the Scourge of Beasts just because we talked to her again. Maybe she just wants us out of our hair. Maybe she's just teasing us. Hard to say. She is one of the more interesting characters, but I don't really feel she gets the true development she deserves. This game is really lacking in characters, the same way the Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Dark Souls 3 are. Not Dark Souls 2. Nobody talks about that game. Yeah, going down here, we can go get the items I was talking about. There's a few rats. Stupid rats. Pretty easy to take down. Since they're beasts, the beast cleaver does bonus damage to them, thankfully. So you can take them down in like 2 hits, as opposed to several hits that you get from other weapons. Which is a big part of why I recommend this starting weapon in most instances if you're just wanting to do a pretty general run. Yeah, there's no way to get up here from down below. So, I'm going to have to go back up there in a bit. There's a few items down here I want to show off. So, I'm going to make a cut after I show off what's past those rats. Maybe the rats carry the pale blood. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that corpse was carrying Madman's knowledge. And this is perhaps one of the best things you want this early in the game if you're first starting out, because without it, there is no way to level up. No way whatsoever. So definitely go out of your way to get that. I think there's at least 2 of them in the level. That's one of them, and as soon as you get it, just smash it in your hand, and you'll be good. You'll have 1 insight, and that's all you need to level up. You don't actually spend the insight to level up, but it's used to activate something in the Hunter's Dream that'll allow you to level up yourself. We'll get to that when we get to that. I'll explain more about what insight is later on. This is the other piece of equipment I was talking about, the saw spear. It's my personal weapon of choice for this part of the game. It does really good scaling compared to the saw cleaver. I have a friend of mine that says the saw cleaver is better for quality builds, but I personally find the flexibility of this weapon to be a lot more effective. Well, it's up to kill this rat. There we go. And I am going to show you one last bit of Central Yharnam, and then I suppose we will... No, actually I won't call it. Not quite yet. Not quite yet. There's a bit more I need to show. You don't want to go up this ladder. I almost forgot for a second. Over at the end of this water vein, you'll find... What's over here? Did I forget about something? No? Okay. It's kind of weird there's just that little alcove with nothing in it in the sewer. It's kind of pointless, but yeah, you'll recognize where we are now. This is where all those corpses were that were crawling about, and there's a ladder that we could have gone to get up here if we wanted to, but I had no interest in that. But yeah, on the bottom level, there's another long ladder. I don't get this game's fetish for long ladders. Well, actually, that's only really in this section of the game, but it's still kind of irritating because it's a lot of climbing. If you have here something fairly important, I do recommend going out of your way to take care of it. There's another Madman's Knowledge over here. I passed these carrion crows. I recommend getting that. Most certainly. Any damage you take shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, another Madman's Knowledge. I'm going to hold on to this one for lore purposes. Anything I can get multiples of, I'll probably be holding on to at least one of, rather than spending them all, even though my compulsion would tell me to do otherwise. And here's another door.
Wretched outsider. Trying to fool me to open this door. Heavens, the depths of depravity.
Friendly, aren't they? Anyway, this is the last brick troll. This one actually wields a different weapon. This one's wielding a club. But we're not going to find out too much about that right now. This one's going to die. There we go. And this will be the last NPC we talk to for now. I'm going to talk to the young Yharnam girl, which has a pretty important item for the second boss. So, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to talk to her right now. But we'll come back here later. For now, I'm going to open this shortcut. I'm going to talk to the young Yharnam girl when it becomes relevant in a few episodes when I get around to fighting the bosses. The next episode is likely just going to be me staring at walls in the Hunter's Dream, talking about lore, and all that fun stuff. So look forward to it. I'll get more into explaining about insight and about the Hunter himself later on. So for now, thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoy this series and stick around for the rest of it, whether you're wanting to know how to play the game better, or you're wanting to learn all the lore. I think I've figured out more stuff than probably anyone, although I could maybe I'm just completely wrong. I am on the brink of madness after all, so who knows? Who knows? Anyway, I feel the onset of laryngitis, so I should probably stop. Have a good day, my fellow hunters and whatnot. Goodbye.